So, for anyone who watched my review of the classic Doctor Who story Warriors of the Deep, you'll know I wasn't a fan. I admit it had some good points, but there was quite a lot of stuff that ended up not working for me, and over time I have come to accept that it is probably one of the worst classic stories that Doctor Who ever did. So that's putting a lot of pressure on its follow up story, The Awakening, the second serial of the 21st season of Doctor Who, first broadcast in two parts on the 19th and 20th of January 1984. So, how did it do? Honestly, while I don't know if it's one of the great Doctor Who stories, it definitely does bring things back, and I do think it is a pretty good story. The Fifth Doctor, played once again by Peter Davison, has come to the village of Little Hodcombe, mainly to give his companion Tegan Jovanka, played by Janet Fielding, a chance to visit her grandfather, a man named Andrew Verney, played by Frederick Hall. So he, Tegan, and Vizsla Turlough, once again played by Mark Strickson, they're mostly there just to cool off a bit, Tegan to meet her grandfather, and then just to have a meeting and just have a little bit of quiet time. However, when they arrive in the village of Little Hodcombe, they find quite a number of things wrong. For a start, Tegan's grandfather is reported to have gone missing. He hasn't been seen for several days. But also, the village appears to be in the middle of a Civil War reenactment. And a teacher, played by Polly James, named Jane Hampton, believes that their kind of annual Civil War reenactment may be going a little bit too far. I mean, they got the men on horseback, they're drawing swords, they're generally acting out the Civil War, but her believing that they're taking prisoners and that they may even be hurting people might be overstepping the boundaries. However, the leader of this kind of reenactment, Sir George Hutchinson, played by Dennis Lill, he doesn't believe that, and he's determined to see this Civil War reenactment through to the end, along with his man Colonel Ben Wolsey, played by Glenn Houston. And they also find a while this is all taking place in 1984, the year it was broadcast, they also encounter a strange man named Will Chandler, who is played by Keith Jane, who is actually a man from 1643 when the actual Civil War was taking place. Now, I'll admit, upon watching this story, I it didn't go the way I was expecting. I mean, there were once I saw what was going on, I was like, okay, I think I understand what's going on here. I mean, behind all of this is a creature called the Malice, which is hidden inside a church and is seemingly evil and cracking open the wall and is causing all this bad stuff. Now, when Chandler turned up, I was like, oh, okay, I think I understand what's going on here. He is from 1643 when the Civil War was actually taking place. He's going to believe this is all actually a real civil war and it's going to have to be up to the Doctor and everyone else to kind of convince him it's not and it's the Malice that's brought him here and they're going to have to sort it all out, right? Not exactly. I just believe that uh, he would think it's a real civil war and be terrified of it and that would be it. I didn't believe that the men who were acting out the Civil War were actually aware of it, but it turns out they were, or at least one of them was. So George Hutchinson is actually aware of the Malice, and that's why he's doing this. He's doing this, acting out the Civil War piece by piece, including death by death, with an attempt with deaths taking place at the exact same time they did in the original Civil War, so that the Malice can gain power and ultimately escape and give him power. Which, the one thing I think I'd say about this story is it's charming. I mean, it's quaint, it's charming. I mean, the stakes don't need to be as high as, okay, a Dalek invasion where everyone's running for their lives. Sometimes it can just be one small town and you can feel good about it. I mean, every single character as well does do well in this. I mean, when we eventually do find Tegan's grandfather, who's kind of been locked up by some of the actors, he does a good job here. He's a likable person. The teacher, played by Polly James, she acts pretty well as well. She she kind of shows someone who's going to be pushed to her limit, but still wants to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. But then when things get dangerous, she gets cross. And you know what? She does really well in this. I will admit, with the Malice creature, they show it in two forms. I kind of prefer the way they see it in the TARDIS, where it's this actual creature kind of climbing up the walls, and the way they do it, you can view it like a spider, in that you're scared of it, but you're sort of also vaguely fascinated by it. Whereas the form that it has in the church, when it's crumbling through the walls, is this kind of giant face with glowing eyes. I'll admit that's not quite as good. It is sort of scary, but I admit I do prefer it when it's this actual creature that you can see. And once again, the actors all do very well in this. I mean, when Tegan's captured and held by the soldiers, she does well as well. I think Ben Woolsey is another one of the kind of actors. He shows this man who's at the start he believes in what he's doing, but when he sees what Hutchinson's been up to and everything, he does kind of feel weird about it. And even by the end, when he's joining their cause to stop the malice, I think that's generally good. Will Chandler, as Will Chandler, the person who's somehow come in from 1643, while the Doctor believes he's kind of like a projection of the malice, he does also well as this man out of time, just trying to get to grips with everything that's going on. And as I said, the story does have a quaint kind of charm to it. It's just a small village. This is just one small thing that's happening. And the stakes, when we get to the end of part 2, they're high, but not world-ending high. But you know what? They do pretty well. The last thing I will say about it is it does have, for me, one of my favourite pieces of dialogue in all of Doctor Who. Or, well, maybe not in all of Doctor Who, but it does have a piece of dialogue right at the end that I really enjoy. When the Doctor's kind of saying, right, we should wrap everything up and then we'll be off on our way. And T's just like, well, I want to spend some time with my grandfather first. And he's like, oh, okay. And everyone else just kind of outvotes him. He's like, all right, I'll stick around for a bit. Which point the conversation goes like this. Good. How much that brown liquid they drink here? Ale? No, tea. What be tea? Oh, an noxious infusion of oriental leaves containing a high percentage of toxic acid. Sounds a rather evil brew, doesn't it? True. Personally, I rather like it. Firstly, that's historically accurate, as the person kind of questioning about tea is Will Chandler, who's come from 1643. And that's historically accurate because I don't believe tea was actually introduced properly to Britain until about 1650. So, you know what? Tea hadn't arrived yet. He doesn't know what it is. But I do love how quaint the Doctor is about it. Just, like, explaining what tea is and making it sound kind of rather evil and scary. And it's like, yeah, personally, I rather like it. I mean, it does kind of explain more about how Tennant reacted when he ultimately used tea to heal himself in the Christmas invasion. It's odd, but it's sweet, and it's rather humorous. It caused me to smirk. So, The Awakening. Overall, I think it's a nice, quaint little story, something to get us back to probably Doctor Who after the disaster that was Warriors of the Deep. If you haven't seen The Awakening yet, I'd say check it out. You'll have a fun time. It's a short story, and it should get you back on track. Will my classic story I review next be? Honestly, I have no idea. Anyway, until then, see ya.